write like a man. Use a typewriter.
I would be interested to know, so like with the fall of the ruble and the decline of the U.S. dollar, which is basically the reserve currency.
Oh yeah,
the global currency. What are your thoughts about a cryptocurrency becoming the currency of the new world order or one world government? Have you ever? I don't know if you've ever thought
in the
about
fallout
that.
of.
I mean, this
Russia
isn't
and
anything that you
Ukraine.
write about in your book. I realize.
Nope.
But I'd
Well,
love your
that's
opinion on
because technology is advancing so fast. I mean, it's hard to know the end product of the mark of the beast. But what we do know is it's still developing, and all the technologies, whether or not it's quantum computing or it's AI and everything else that's going on in the healthcare industry, that's going to be sort of merged together. One has to have a cashless society, as we said it in layman terms before, but there has to be one, as we understand it, as we start to understand the technology now, that has to be able to work not only cashless, but within the digital world, but in a way that's going to be capable of working with AI and quantum computing and fit into that whole level of technology. And I think this Bitcoin has been allowed to develop to sort of work the bugs out before they take it over. Just as you see the Biden government now talking about trying to move to control it where they never did before.
And just this week.
Yeah. And then you have another branch that we need to be aware of. So I think that's ultimately going to be part of that whole buy and sell part of it, right? That's going to be used down the road. That's all interconnected into this greater beast system. That's going to be part of the implant mark system that people are going to be asked to receive. But there's this, and you hear about it now. I mean, you have the Swift banking and you have the Swiss banking, but it's the Swift banking one that people are really focused on in terms of how the U.S. monetary system sort of controls the world, which is sort of controlled still by the old money and the Swiss money in Switzerland, because all of the banking is there now, including the Rothschilds that moved there, that linked up with the money that went there from the Templars and to the Hospitallers or the Knights of St. John, who were already there. And then the Vatican money, once they got a hold of the Vatican Bank through the Jesuits and I'm trying to think of the specific order that was founded that took over. Anyways, it was Borgia. I can't quite come up with the name of the order right now, but he was a descendant of several of the popes, right? He's of royal bloodline, and he's the one who funds the Jesuits, who then becomes the third Grand Master in 1570, takes over the Jesuits, and then he and the King of Spain work together, and they get control of the banking that they moved to Switzerland. So they got everything sort of there. That's still, the modern banking that we know it today, even though they say it's a little bit more recent. It's got right back to the time of the Knights Templar when it was being set up there. But that's the Swift banking that has a lot of the U.S.-based leverages to it. That you need the U.S. and you need to have access to this. China has been working with Russia to set up a new system. They actually have a SWIFT system, but it's only about 20% as influential as the current one that's used by most of the world. So when you hear the language of them setting up a new system so that the US doesn't have the ability and the Europeans don't have the ability to create such economic havoc, that's where this is really going to be heading. It'll be independent of anything that the West is going to be doing. That, again, could be part of that two legs of this empire that's being revived, that's going to happen, that's going to end be on, the five toes on each of the feet. So look more of that. And they want this, and particularly Xi wants this because he wants a larger role and to be the one calling the shots in the world.
Sure.
And he's going to, I think he's going to, he may let Putin dangle for a while, but he's going to ultimately save him through this system. And they've already got that limitless treaty. and that oil is going to be shipped to China, so they don't have to bring it in from other parts of the world. So even if you shut it off, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but they've already got those markets already set up in the second largest economy in the world, right? So, and you're going to see more of that economic union. And then as Xi advances, he's going to swallow up more countries that are going to be forced into his system. And then he's going to force Southeast Asia to be part of that. And that's why you see India standing on the sidelines right now in terms of what's going on in the war today.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing about it, is that long-term projection of like, okay, if China and Russia get in bed with each other, then this could look like World War III, but just economically, if nothing else. America gets Western civilization gets put into a secondary or auxiliary position.
Yeah, and let's face it, the U.S. cannot afford a war.
No, we really can't. On just about any level.
Yeah, over 30 trillion in debt. And I mean, who knows? I mean, what the deficit's going to be on an annual basis. They can't afford another war. So they, the policies that were enacted overzealously but intendedly, I think, to create a debt level through the pestilence that's just happened was intentional.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, especially after what happened with the election happened. And then after that, the first thing that gets done is the Keystone Pipeline gets shut down, and then, what do? We cut off, buying oil from Russia. And, we try to court Venezuela, but why would a lot of these countries want anything to do with us at this, because we are in such a weakened position, especially militarily.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah. Let's go. Yeah, that's right.
And there's no need for the U.S. to be in this position. I mean, we all know that they could be the world's largest producer of oil, and that it's gone from, in 1 year, from being a net exporter to a net importer, and they had to buy from Russia throughout the year, funding what was going on, and the government knowing they were funding what was going on, and knowing that Russia what they were going to do, and at the same time cutting off all of the arms that Trump was providing, the oppressed nation that is being talked about today, and that even as it increased with military numbers around the borders, that reinstatement of the supply of arms, or producing more oil to be self-sufficient, was reenacted to start coming about. I mean, all of that is you'd have to be an absolute village idiot.
Yeah,
which is plausible, I suppose, considering who's running the country right now. But I think it's by design that they knew this war was coming.
Yeah, and
they created the scenario to fund it. And then, and I think they wanted the destruction. I think they wanted that. I think it's about the New World Order, and they're just painting, Putin today because as this madman, because he's not doing it in the way that they want, but he was going to get some of this anyways. They just don't want him to get all that he wants, right? They just want to sort of limit that, and that's what it's really all about. And it's how do you, if we're going to be moving into this new world order that's envisioned by the European bloodlines, that the U.S. has to be brought down a level significantly, how do you get there fast enough in the timetable that they want to bring it about in? You have to destroy the U.S. economy. And the Russian economy is not going to be destroyed. It's just going to go elsewhere.
Yeah, it'll just shift. The pieces just shift on the board.
And then what I find really interesting is how you have these certain laboratories where you're creating pestilence opportunities that's akin to what happened in another Asian country.
And
you don't do anything in all of the time that you get the buildup. I mean, even as late as March, but you could go back even earlier with that war in 2014 where they took the Crimea. There was nothing to prepare to get these scientific beasties that they've created out of that country to protect them. All of this is going on. I mean, why wouldn't you do that unless you didn't want to? I mean, it absolutely makes no sense other than that's what they wanted. And so we'll have to see how this sort of all plays out. But Russia gets what it wants, but in a more painful way that they're hoping is going to affect it down the road from expanding as far as they want to go. But it won't help because they've got China backing them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Hey, Gary, I have a question. I'm going to put it up here on the screen. It's from Joey Payne, who just happens to be my mom, by the way.
Shout out,
I'm
Joey.
so glad she's watching. It's awesome.
Miss you.
She, like me, she's a big fan, and she always enjoys our conversations.
When we told her that,
her question is, what do you think about Bill Gates' patent number? Which is so interesting when you look it up. The patent number 06666 application having to do with a Bitcoin technology that tracks whether you are a human or an AI doing the activity.
Wow.
Yeah, they broadcast who they are, what they're all about, and their intentions all the way through.
Telegraphing. Yeah.
There was, as you know, I write it in the book, and it's kind of a little bit ancient right now, but there was a company called Mondax, who was really a force for moving to chip technology and the credit cards and the cashless society. And of course, they chose an address in New York City. I can't remember the name of the street, the number of the street, but their address was 666. I mean,
of course it was. Why not?
They broadcast it all over the place, just like any of the companies, their iconology and their names are usually rooted in.
It's like when all the
somewhere.
rappers do this, when they all hold their, it's broadcast all the time. Well, and that chip technology, you wouldn't think, I bet when social security numbers came out, everybody was pretty intense about the mark of the beast thing, because it's like you couldn't do a lot, and then the barcodes came out and people were upset over that.
Yeah, but and the 3 bars that are missing are that aren't numbered are 6, 6, and 6, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I've heard of that before.
Yeah, and just sort of, I'll just interrupt you just for a second. So you have to understand the beast system and the beast empires. They're ready at whatever level of technology to implement their system, right? So if they had found a way to bring about the end time in the 80s, they still would have had the same type of numerals and geomancy involved that this higher tech stuff will have.
Yeah. Dude, geomancy, that's such a perfect word for it.
And tying into that, Brian Tucker says that Gates was quoted as saying we can control the population through vaccines.
Yeah. Well, of course,
as part of one of those tools that they have ready to go to.
Through as Davos said in I think 2017, they wanted that through an implant system that would self-medicate everybody.
Sign me up, please.
But that makes sense when you look at the word sorceries in the Book of Revelations, which is the Greek word pharmakeia. It's actually pharmakus and pharmakos, but that is how they're going to medicate people to a certain degree through a digital system, which we have the not that mark system in place yet, or the technology of medication with the mRNA, but it's a digital messaging type of system that is still developing that would be part of that down the road, which would merge into that whole digital chip system that we're talking with all those other technologies we're talking about a little earlier, and that people will demand that for better health and longer life. And they imagine the chip in 2017, they said the chip system will come through the delivery system of healthcare.
Oh my gosh. Which is why healthcare has been given so much authority over our lives.
Now, sorceries or pharmakeia can also mean a spell, as a magic spell, as you take that out of its etymology. and it also means drugs, both legal and illegal. So it can also be part of all of the pharmaceutical drugs as well. And that word sorceries is there for a reason in the King James Version Bible.
Yeah.
So the secret societies who created the Royal Society, which were the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians, that is the center of all scientific development and education outside the church in the West today, called themselves the last of the sorcerers and the first of the scientists.
Oh, wow.
And that word, as it's used in Revelation 18:23, if I've got the verse correct, is through these sorceries does Babylon seduce and deceive the world.
Yeah. The
Either way, it's
Rising.
fallen angel technology.
Yeah. Nephilim culture.
Yeah.
Well, that's the frightening thing about it is, and they've been pushing for this. Like you say, if they could have done this back in the 80s, they would have done it. They could have done it in the 90s, they would. And I remember reading, I was into end times prophecy back when I was such a weird little dork. When I was in early high school in 8th grade, I used to read these books. We'd get them from Lifeway, and I remember they talked about one of the things they talked about, because this was during the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, was when they first started implanting little chips into dogs, and now just last week I saw a video where a lady had a chip implanted in her wrist that would allow her to unlock the door to her house, unlock the bathroom, unlock the nightstand. And I'm just does no one connect the dots?
Well, now go back, and again, like I say, things are always developing, but and they're ready all the time if the opportunity comes. But the Mondax company I talked about is they were intent that this chip system that they were developing for the credit cards would at some point in time not serve its proper purpose because of security issues, that it would have to become an implant.
No kidding.
Yes. And they found through their research that based on the technology that they had at the time, that the best location for security and application and protected was either in your right hand or your forehead.
Oh, that's right. I remember seeing something about that with the whole luciferase aspect. The guy who invented the luciferase angle of the jab, talking about how that same thing, that it would have to be implanted in your right hand or in your forehead for the most. And you know what? They laid the groundwork for all this years or decades in advance. The temperature checks. Back when the Wuhan flu first kicked off, everywhere you went, you'd have to, have a temperature check, especially at the dentist. And I used to tell them all the time, listen, I've been shot at. So you put anything like a gun at my head, I don't plan to get it, and so the alternative,
it's got that unnerving feeling.
It really, well, it's like cattle, they euthanize cattle with the air gun, that's how it makes you feel. It's the medical world is so dehumanizing now because of this. It's such a psyop. Gary, I'll tell you, I think we may have mentioned it before, but when, as a quick aside, when the first case hit Williamson County, where we live, I was working a security job, and they had a hard time. They had not enough bottled water for this performance, for the show that they were going to do. It was at a theater. And so they were already kind of out looking for bottled water. And within an hour of them finding out on the radio that the first case had broken in Williamson County, you couldn't find water anywhere. And I remember getting this sick feeling in my stomach, this. I remember literally thinking the words, "This feels like witchcraft. This feels like some sort of hex, some sort of spell that has been cast over people," because it's something other than just because mass psychosis can happen.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
But it's something other. There's something nefariously supernatural that's going on with this sort of thing. And that temperature thing, they'll do it on your head or they'll do it on your wrist somewhere. Anyways.
Yeah, they accomplished so much in preparation for world government and world religion through this last pestilence, and pushed the boundaries, learned everything they could do. I mean, you saw what happened in Canada with the War Measures Act that didn't hit their threshold for having it in, but the whole left voted for it in Canada, so it became ability, and then they started to seize, GoFundMe and the other place. They seized, I don't know, something like 400 bank accounts.
That's
People
right.
can't have. They took their driver's licenses away. They were taking their trucks away. They were losing their ability to work completely.
Yeah.
And most people didn't object.
That's the scary thing.
That's
And it
the scary
happened.
thing.
It happened here with cash. You talk about a cashless society. You remember in the first probably, what was it, 6 to 8 months of
Yep.
of the pestilence breaking out, all of a sudden, gas stations and grocery stores and stuff weren't giving you change back,
Yep.
and you were
Mhm.
discouraged. There were a lot of articles that went out that discouraged you from using cash because
Yep.
supposedly it would, transmit the virus. And
Yeah.
it's just, of course,
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah, use
So-
your credit cards. That if Bank of America decides they don't like your Twitter feed, they can cancel.
Yeah.
And the big thing that they're pooling their information on as to where they are at right now is they weren't aggressive enough, and they need to learn from the mistakes that they made so that they could be more totalitarian the next go around and how to do it.
Right.
So,
Yeah, right.
Right.
They
Did
didn't
it-
quite do a
They
good
didn't
enough
pull
job
it
this
off the
time.
right,
Yeah.
just perfectly. Exactly. I have a question for you, more related to AI and Web 3.0 and everything that's coming to us on that end, and how it might tie into all this. What are your, and again, this is not something that, this is a bit of a curveball question. I just want your opinion.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Gary. We had a list.
It's just it's so great talking to you because I love your perspective.
Yeah. I
What
hope
are
you're okay with that.
yeah, what,
Yeah, I'm
what,
fine.
what are your thoughts on the metaverse?
Oh yeah, yeah. Is that part of Nephilim culture too? You
Well,
think?
sure it
That
is. Sure it is.
Dissociation of the human body.
Yeah, so the metaverse is this whole matrix system that they're talking about, right? That's based on sacred science and sacred geometry, sacred math, advanced technology, and this is the world that they're trying to bring in. And they believe in polytheism, that the world is a computer matrix, right?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
this is a projection, and the whole world is based on this geomancy, that, and the codes that they have. You need to look past beyond like being a diviner and stuff like that, and into the mathematical parts of the geomancy as you dig into that. And that if we understand that that's what they're trying to do, and we see these things like a virtual world, they're just trying to recreate what they think is already here as a virtual world, right?
Mhm.
And that this
they
is
control and they're gods of.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Because they ain't going to be in it.
Yeah. Well, that they control. I mean, that's the big thing of AI and silicon-based life forms versus carbon-based life forms is that God created those, but we want to be God.
right. So, what was the question again? Because I
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
No, it's
My bad.
just your opinion on the metaverse, and
yeah. So that's what I was looking for. I couldn't quite get that, and so when we look at how they named it, it will tell you something, and that it is a short version. It might be an acronym of some sort, but that's not how they always work. So, like CERN, they say is an acronym, but it's actually CERN was the god, which is a Pan type of god, an Azazel type of god, Satyr god, as at least in the degraded form in the Etruscan pantheon, which was there before Rome, right? Or Cernunnos, which is the same god in the Druidic pantheon. So that's not an acronym; it's the name of a god, and it's the name of the destroyer god, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that Azazel is, and Bad Napoleon. So when we look at Meta, I would look into Metatron. And Metatron is the Enoch son of Cain in the third book of Enoch, who raises himself up to be an angel-like status and even to the son of God-like status through the knowledge that he developed. And his name they changed to Metatron once he became at that level. And Metatron is the name of the spirit that is guiding a lot of the scientists and the people that are working on a lot of this digital technology and providing the things that they need to develop it. So anytime you see Meta, you need to be thinking in terms of the Nephilim fallen angel technology and knowledge, just as you've been talking about, because they're going to label it. So even when Facebook changes their group company name to the Meta, that is what he's telling us is he's positioning his social media and his corporate oligarchical company is going to be part of that system that's coming, the beast system, and it's going to be a major part that they call the metaverse.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Mm.
You know, all that is has come before.
And it's amazing to telegraph. You know, I think they telegraph because they know that the people who call them out on it are going to be they're just going to be labeled as
labeled as religious kooks.
Conspiracy theorists, so forth.
Yeah.
Well,
and it'll only further validate what they're doing.
And it works because what they have been doing and what they intend to bring about is of such a scale, of such complex nature, of so many different parts, that most rational people would, rightfully just say that's crazy talk. Nothing that big could be that secret. And they're right. They don't even try and keep a secret of it. They hide it in plain sight. And they know that people have been brainwashed because they've been preparing them, that they know that they won't even have a clue what's coming at them, even though they told us.
You're right. Yeah, they warned us.
Yep.
That's how they do it. They warn you every time, and all the answers are there. The telegraphs are there. They're just all encoded, or they're slightly esoteric, or they're sometimes pretty blatant, like media. I mean, we use the term media all the time. Well, that was a goddess, but everybody's got, everybody has a day job. Most people have kids, it's just they don't have time to do this. And they're banking on that lackadaisical, attitude towards all of this.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And the media is they're playing their part perfectly, particularly with the current war that's going on, and all of the focus is on Russia right now, and there's no focus on China, who is the one that is making it happen. Right. And there's nothing, and he's watching it strategically because they play things from a lot higher level than the village idiots running our countries lately in the last few years.
Tapioca brains.
That they're watching everything that is happening for their plays to come. So they get a chance to see how they should do it, and they'll do it better than what Putin is doing.